Welcome to Classroom Management Part 2. Our focus today is going to be on classroom procedures, but let's start with the definition. So, what is classroom management? It is both creating and maintaining a positive and productive classroom. So, let's break that down. Creating. So, before day one of any school year, you need to have created your classroom management plan. And its focus should be on how to make sure you have a positive classroom psychological climate and how to make sure that your room is productive in terms of time on task spent learning. But you'll notice the other verb, which is maintain. That is perhaps one of the harder parts, which is then maintaining and implementing that plan year round. So before we move forward, I want us to keep in mind what we've learned previously about a responsive mindset. And the acronym we used was CPR, being conscientious, focusing on prevention, and focusing on relationships. We will refer back to these throughout today's lesson. But again, our focus for today is classroom procedures and routines. Let's first see what they are and what they aren't. So, what are they? Procedures for accomplishing daily tasks. Things like how do you take attendance each day? How do you dismiss your students at the end of the day? What aren't they? Well, they're not rules. Rules are statements of what your students can and cannot do, what is acceptable, what is not acceptable, and there are typically consequences for breaking those rules. We will cover rules, but that simply isn't for today. So, what are some examples of classroom procedures and routines? You can probably tell from my hints below. It includes things like lining up to go to lunch. How do your students go to the bathroom? What do they do if they break their pencil and need to sharpen them? Now, this slide here, I'll have these from time to time, and it's where I've tried to connect my assertions to research other than in the textbook. And so, research tends to indicate that having good classroom management and using procedures can do three important things for your class. It can increase student engagement, so they're more engaged and they're participating more, reduce misbehaviors, which is something I think all of us would want, and maximize instructional time. So you can see the great benefit of using procedures. So, why are they helpful? First of all, research also indicates that most students do appreciate structure and predictability in the classroom. Now, yes, this is especially helpful for some of your students with accommodations. Students who are neurodivergent typically appreciate that sort of predictability in their routine, that they know at what time they need to get out their book for composition. They know at what time they're going to get snack or lunch, etc. Why else are they helpful? Oh, and first, I don't want to forget, this obviously feeds into that idea of a conscientious mindset. Remember, thinking about and caring for the whole student, being conscientious. So, procedures are also helpful because they help your class to be more organized. When you have routines, when things occur in a structured way, you're going to find that you're going to improve time on task. Time on task is the actual amount of time spent learning in the classroom. In disorganized classrooms, there's a lot of time spent trying to get things ready for the next lesson, whether it is trying to figure out how to handle students who are misbehaving, what to do about pencils that need sharpened, and people need to go to the bathroom, and students need help, and so on. You can see where I'm going. A structured classroom with procedures is going to be more organized, and therefore more learning can occur. Adding to this, that also fits with a conscientious mindset, being a conscientious teacher who is thinking about things that they need to do to improve their class. I love this quote: routines are the backbone of daily classroom life. They facilitate teaching and learning. They don't just make your life easier, they save valuable classroom time. And what's most important, effective routines make it easier for students to learn and achieve more. Okay, how else can they be helpful? Still under that heading of being more organized, it improves what we call smoothness. Smoothness, a smooth lesson, is the teacher's ability to keep the class running smoothly while maintaining the student's focus. Sometimes it's easiest to see smoothness when we look at the opposite of it. Have you been in a lesson before where you feel like it's very staggered? It has tangents, it has breaks, it has moments where the teacher needs to get her things together because she's not prepared. That does not facilitate learning. So, the more organized you are and the better procedures you have, the more smooth your daily classroom experience will be for your students. Some other ways that procedures can be helpful: it lightens your load. As a teacher, you already have enough responsibilities. Perhaps there are some easier ways you could do things like handle taking attendance, handle getting students ready to go to lunch, dealing with bathroom passes. And then also on this list, it reduces misbehaviors. Study after study shows that classrooms that are well organized with procedures in place have fewer behaviors. So let's put that under the category of prevention mindset, trying to prevent misbehaviors before they occur by having a well managed class with procedures. And I thought, again, this comes from a great book called The Cornerstone. Teaching students procedures is a proactive approach to preventing rule violations. So, where do I start? When you sit down to think about your classroom management plan, this can be one of your guiding questions. What do I want the students to do so that I can teach and they can learn? Right? When you start to get the answer to that, you'll be well on your way to creating your classroom management plan. For today, we're going to be looking at 10 common classroom procedures and then focusing on how to implement them. I will also try to give plenty of examples along the way. So, our first procedure is going to be start of day. So, your students get to school in the morning. What do they do? Do you want them just to mill about and talk and do nothing until the bell rings, or should there be a procedure in place? So, most research indicates you should have a routine to prepare for the start of class. At the bare minimum, they need to put away their belongings and they need to have everything out and ready for class. That could include turning in homework, that could include a certain book that they need to have out on their desk, that they need a certain number of pencils, whatever works for you and your students. Why? Well, this is going to help you start your class in a calm, structured atmosphere. So rather than it being hectic with students running around and talking, and then the bell rings and you're trying to get everyone to settle down, they have already had certain things that they've done. They're more prepared to start their day in a more calm manner. And it gives you time to get yourself prepared and ready, and might even free up some time to welcome students and help with that positive classroom climate and relationships. So, again, all of this goes under that heading of conscientious mindset. So, food for thought, here's a question. So, at your field placement, what do you see your mentor teacher doing? Do they have a morning routine? And if so, is it helpful? Remember, as reflective practitioners, we always have to be willing to revisit the things we've created in case we might need to change them because, perhaps it isn't working, perhaps it needs to be edited. So, keep an eye out for morning routines. Here are some examples. So from left to right, I have elementary, middle, and high school, and you can see you might have different focuses on what it is you want the students to do. You need to create one that works for your class and your students, but they all have a similar purpose: getting ready for the day. All right, our second classroom procedure, a bell ringer or a sponge activity. So what's that? This is an activity for the entire class to do to prepare for the upcoming lesson. So, yes, this could be also at the start of the day. So, in addition to putting their things away and having things out on their desk, it could be an activity for them to do. But it doesn't have to be at the start of the day. Any transition point works. When they come in from recess, when they come back from PE and you need to switch gears into a science lab. So, any sort of transition. Here's some examples from elementary, middle, high school. And so you can see it could simply be some activities on their desk. It could be a writing prompt. It could be a math assignment. And remember, you don't always have to recreate the wheel. Teachers pay teachers. You can find some fabulous bell ringer activities, morning work, and so on. Our third common procedure is how do you get your students' attention? If you're constantly saying shh or get quiet, I tell you what, You probably need a new strategy. So let's look. And I thought I'd start with the question, what are some ways that teachers can get students' attention? Hearing the shh over and over or the be quiet over and over typically doesn't work. And if you notice that you're saying that over and over, that again tells you that it's not working. So instead, most research indicates that attention getters should be, first of all, novel, and secondly, fun. So, what do I mean by novel? Novel means something out of the ordinary. And fun, again, it can be something enjoyable. It doesn't have to be punitive. Attention getters can also be creative. So, whether you're using common callbacks, one, two, three, eyes on me, mac and cheese, everybody freeze. I thought this was a cute idea here. So, this person put spring water and lavender essential oils in a spray bottle and they spray it and call it their quiet spray. But attention getters should not be punitive, annoying, or awkward. Let's break that down. So at the top left, the teacher who is scratching out the word stop. And typically what happens is if you get loud, I'll keep scratching out the letters and everyone gets in trouble if I make it to the P. Attention getters don't have to be punitive. In the middle one, the bell. I've seen some teachers use a bell or some sort of a loud noise as an attention getter. It doesn't have to be annoying. And finally, awkward. So, yes, having the students put the hands on their head might work, but again, callbacks and things like that can be a lot more fun and a lot less annoying. Next on our list for common classroom procedures is lining up. Now, depending on the age of your students, depending on your school, this might be of varying levels of importance. I do like this quote that I saw in the book, The Classroom Management Secret. The way your line looks when you walk down the hall and the way in which your students give their attention when you ask for it are measures of your classroom effectiveness. So, what are some things we can do to scaffold this to help our students? On the far left, we see this sign would be great for our early readers because it has some visual aids as well. Very simple, just 2 to 3 words. In the middle, you can turn it into a rhyme, you can turn it into a song. On the far right, down below here, I love the use of these dots to help the students space out, to help them stay where they need to be. So, number 5, we have cleaning. When it comes to having your students take some responsibility for cleaning, keep in mind they may or may not have experience with cleaning and organizing the materials at home. So don't assume that they know how to clean or that their definition of cleanliness is the same as yours. You are going to need, in many instances, to actually teach cleaning. Show them what a clean desk looks like. So when you tell them clean up their desk, what does that mean? Are they allowed to have trash on the floor? Where do their pencils need to be? Where should their books be? So make sure you provide some explicit instruction. You can also have classroom jobs like a desk fairy who goes around and checks to make sure that desks are clean. Now, if you start to think, well, maybe that's too much work for my students, they shouldn't be cleaning, they're here to learn, I want you to take a moment and look at what some schools are doing in other countries. So keep in mind your students are capable sometimes of a lot more than we give them credit for. All right, classroom procedure number 6, pencil sharpening. Now you might wonder, why is pencil sharpening on here? I did a teaching in service once and I asked the teachers what was one thing that was driving them crazy in their classroom. And so many of them commented on pencil sharpening. So that made me, add this to the presentation, the idea that this should be a procedure. This should not be a headache in your class. One of the simplest things you can do is this. Start each day with a supply of fresh pencils that are ready to go, When the student happens to break a pencil, they come up, they dump it in the empty one, and they pick up a new one. You don't have to listen to the sound of the pencil sharpener. You don't have to have a raise of hands or handle it. All right, so number 7, class jobs. So, why have class jobs for students? The primary purpose is to transfer some responsibility to the students for keeping the classroom running smoothly and to help with uninterrupted instruction. Think of the various things that your students are capable of doing in the classroom and assign jobs. You can see some examples here. Who's in charge of handling the computers or the whiteboard or the calendar or pencils? You need someone to be your pencil sharpener. You need someone to erase the whiteboard, perhaps. Classroom jobs help to teach responsibility to your students, and that may not be part of your learning objectives, but it is a life skill that they need. And you can see down below, I try to come up with I try to find some clip art to represent some unusual jobs like the smartboard guru, the info checker, and so on. I thought this was a great video I recently saw online with the idea of rather than having individual classroom jobs, to do it as a group. I think that's a great idea. And again, that way, regardless if you have a student or two who are ill, you still have cohesiveness among the classroom jobs. So this is a good time for you to think about what classroom jobs might you have noticed at your field placement. And again, I think anytime we talk about a new topic in the classroom, you should be thinking about, have I seen that in the field? Is it being done effectively or not? Number 8, early finishers. So what do I mean by early finishers? These are activities for the students in your class who get work done quickly. Very rarely are you going to have a class where everyone finishes their seat work at the same time, right? So what do you do for those students who get done early and then they're just sitting there and they're waiting? And studies have found that when students sit and when they wait, they tend to misbehave because they're bored. So you need to have some sort of an activity for them. It should be fun and challenging. Fun in order to keep their attention. Challenging because probably these students are academically doing well in your class if they're getting done early. So you want something that's going to challenge them. It shouldn't feel like empty, busy work. It should be relatively short because they might only need it for a minute or two. So some examples on how to handle early finishers. I've saw this online, the idea of an I'm done jar. They can go over the jar, pull out a slip of paper. It would have an activity or something for them. You can also go to Teachers Pay Teachers, and they have tons of ideas. Adding to this, there should be some level of accountability. Students like to get that extrinsic motivator of knowing that their teacher has looked at and commented on their work. Sometimes that is why they're doing it. So there should not, I'm not saying it has to be for a grade, but there should be some sort of a feedback from the instructor on it, even if it's a sticker or just some sort of a comment or a mark on it. Another way you can approach it is focusing on areas where all students need extra practice. Well, golly, that could be handwriting, that could be reading. There are so many areas where, students would benefit from extra practice. I thought this was cute. So here this teacher has a cranium club challenge. And so if you finish, you can go over to that area. You can pick a sheet of paper and have something to practice. A reading corner is fantastic because, reading has so many extraneous benefits to it. I thought this was cute. So, critical thinking is an area that we never have enough time to cover in the classroom. It's often not even in our learning objective. So, you can get a critical thinking book. They could work on art, on handwriting, creative writing, all kinds of things. Number 9, transitions. So, this is referring to transitions between subjects. So that time between lessons where students might be moving seats, they might be getting out different resources, they might need to be preparing for the next lesson. That is usually an area where things can fall apart in the classroom, where noise levels go up, misbehaviors occur, and students get off task. So, at the very least, you want to have a list of here's what we do when we transition from composition to science or to prepare for math. Um, my advice would be before they start their transition, get them silent first. Okay, because you want start at a low noise level because it's only going to go up from there. Set some sort of a time limit. You could put a timer up on the screen. You could play a song that is an exact amount of time. You say, all right, we're going to play our 1 minute song now. Set an acceptable voice level. Let them know, can they talk? If so, how loud can they be? And then finally, we have our end of day procedure. So, what do you want to happen at the end of the day? The bell rings, they shut their book, grab their bag, and run out the room? Or perhaps something more organized than that. You should have a dismissal procedure, certain things that the students are supposed to do before they leave. It could include cleaning up their area, it could include writing down what their homework is going to be. Again, all of this varies based upon the age of your students. But you certainly do want to leave time. Don't wait until the bell rings to start this procedure. Even if you only give yourself 3 or 4 minutes, leave some time for this end of day routine. All right, so where we need to go from here is looking at some tips for procedures. We've seen why they're helpful, we've seen what some helpful ones are, but now, in terms of implementing them, begin well. The beginning is extremely important. Invest the beginning of the school year on your classroom management. Introduce, explain, reinforce your routines. Check down below. So this is from Harry Wong. Writes a lot of great books on classroom management. Student achievement at the end of the year is directly related to the degree to which a teacher establishes good control of the classroom procedures in the very first week of the school year. Be vigilant and persistent. The hardest part is maintaining this all year long. So be willing to pause halfway through the year and say, you know what, our routine for how we raise our hand and wait to be called on seems to be slipping. Let's remember what this routine is about. Let's practice it again so we can start to get a better job with it, right? Be willing to revise. Be willing to look at the procedures you've created and ask yourself, is this working or not? Maybe I don't just need to reteach it. Maybe I need to revise it. And the potential result is you might have a class that starts to run on automatic pilot. If you invest that time in the beginning of the year, you teach it, you don't let it slip away from you, you can start to have a class where things are just kind of happening on their own and you're increasing your time on task. And that's it. So thank you, and I'll see you next time.